back here. They evolved in prairies. They evolved in natural grasslands where there's a lot of diversity. And these predators, just like you or me, would not want to survive for the rest of their lives eating only one thing, like say soybean aphid or something like that. They eat all kinds of things out there. They're eating pollen, they're eating nectar, they're eating different kinds of insect prey, they're eating foliage, they're eating actual plants themselves. A lot of these are omnivores. We've taken the food web that these guys have evolved in, and we've simplified it down within not so much this field, but within most of our agroecosystems consist of a single plant, large monocultures of a single plant. And those single plants hold very few herbivores for these natural enemies to eat, maybe a couple of species that we regard as pests, and we try to spray the living heck out of them. We've made it to the point where our natural enemies don't have what they need in order to make a living in our cropland. And so one of the really key things that we need as entomologists to do and as farmers to do is we need to understand the processes and all of the resources the natural enemies require to make a living, and we need to start getting some of those things back into farmland. Though from yesterday's presentation, I mean, the two central ideas that I really hope are things that you remember are to reduce disturbance and increase diversity while still being able to take off a crop. And those are some of the ideas that I think Gail is really starting to capitalize on his farm, is getting that biodiversity out there. This was not a monoculture of corn out here. Albeit it doesn't look so great because of the heat this year, but man, he's got a lot of vegetational diversity out there. And he's doing it while trying to take a decent corn crop off, or at least as good as he can get. So, as an entomologist, one of the things that we've been studying a lot up in Brookings, and a way to try to get some of this diversity back into farmland, is through the use of cover crops. And cover crops, from a pest management standpoint, make a heck of a lot of ecological sense. When we take and leave soil fallow over the winter period, what we've done is we've eliminated most of the life out of that soil. And then we plant our crop into the soil in the spring, and not surprisingly, some of the first insects to colonize that crop are the pests. And there's nothing there. There's no biotic resistance there. There's no predators, there's no pathogens there to try to kill these natural enemies, or these pests when they arrive. One thing that cover crops do is it provides habitat. The residue from cover crops provides a great basis for the food web of all of these diverse little organisms that are out there that then predators can move in and eat. There's all kinds of other types of resources like nectar from cover crops and pollen from cover crops that the natural enemies can eat, such that when the pests arrive in that crop field, there's all kinds of natural enemies that are just sitting there and waiting for them. So we've run some experiments with cover crops in corn, or preceding corn rather. And what we found is with the western corn rootworm, this is the biggest pest of agriculture, the most expensive pest of agriculture to control in the world. The adults are beetles. We may see some here today. And the larvae live underground and they eat corn roots. They make the plant fall over and cause all kinds of physiological stress on the plant. What we found is we established two different systems up in Brookings. One that had a winter cover crop. In our case, it was just slender wheatgrass, because our agronomist said that in our area was pretty well adapted to preceding corn. And then the other was just bare soil. And we infested each of these with 1,000 corn rootworm eggs per row foot. I mean, we wanted to test the living hell out of these systems, right? And we came back and we looked at all the predators, and we collected up the pests at each life stage of the pest. And what we found is that even though the cover crop was reduced to residue by that point on the soil surface, we found that corn rootworm larvae were reduced in the slender wheatgrass plots or the cover cropped plots, that the root damage had been reduced, and that the natural enemy populations were through the roof. We were seeing maybe 4 or 5-fold more natural enemies in the residue plots than in the plots that had bare soil. To the point where I think that we would have a cost-competitive system with a lot of the transgenics or seed treatment systems that are currently being sold today. We can use these cover crops to encourage this predator diversity and their function. We do exactly what you guys did, except in these different plots, and we were doing it during the day and at night in order to measure how much predation was going on. And sure enough, those predation rates were directly correlated with how much root damage was inflicted on the crop. The more predation there was, the less root damage. It's very highly correlated.